r/NoSleep. Posted by you/CallMeStarr. The butcher's knife at my restaurant keeps chopping off fingers. Now it's got a taste for blood. Dave, you need to hire more short order cooks, my boss told me, so I did, which wasn't easy. These days, most high school kids and college kids don't want to do this type of work. They can't take the heat. Plus, the pay is shit. Let's face it, unless you're running the kitchen, which I am, being a short order cook is a crappy job. It'll turn even the most altruistic person into a raging alcoholic within weeks. But I digress. I managed to hire 2 workers, a lanky, pimply-faced boy named Darren, who looks to be 14, but really is 17, and a tough-looking, second-year college student named Deb. Deb, I could tell, is someone I could count on. Or so I thought. My city has suffered tremendously throughout this lockdown. There were times when I thought this little burger joint would go bankrupt. It still might. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. Anyway, you get the point. Chuck's Burger Barn will finally be open for indoor dining this coming Monday. Hooray, what could possibly go wrong? Darren and Deb came in for training on Saturday. Deb, who has 3 years' experience as a short order cook, took to the job effortlessly. Darren, however, was useless right out of the gate. I asked Deb to train him on prep. Prep, for all you non-cooks out there, is when you chop and slice and wedge and dice all the topping and portions needed for the day. It's not rocket science. Then I noticed the knife. It was new. Actually, it looked older than Christ on the cross. I'd never seen it before. It just appeared. It had a long, smooth wooden handle and a generous blade, dark around the edges. Ancient-looking symbols and unusual words were carved into the side of the handle, which I couldn't decipher. It looked creepy as hell. I shrugged. I hadn't given much thought to the mysterious blade until Darren came rushing over to me. Blood was gushing from his hand like a furious volcano, his eyes as wet as a sprinkler. He wasn't exactly crying. He was in shock. Before he opened his mouth, I noticed his severed finger on the cold kitchen floor, lying haplessly next to a half-chopped carrot. Blood was everywhere. Both his severed finger and the half-chopped carrot were stained with thick red goop. Darren was holding out his injured hand and panting like a dog in heat. His blood was squirting all over the vegetables he was supposed to be chopping. His Imagine Dragons t-shirt was now a bloodied mess. Great, I thought, now I need to hire another cook. I sent Darren to the first aid room, which hadn't been used in the 10 years I'd been working at Chuck's. Since the owners of Chuck's were running around like mad scientists, clearly too busy to deal with this minor emergency, it was up to me to deal with him, and there's no way I was stitching up this dipshit's digit. First, I told Deb to continue prepping while I called 911. Then I fetched his severed finger. It was all sticky and gross. I wiped carrot slime and blood from it and stuck it in a glass full of ice. I delivered it to Darren. His face went as white as bread. He started hyperventilating. Great, I thought, he's a basket case. The ambulance couldn't arrive soon enough. I left him alone with his finger and hurried back to the kitchen. Deb was chopping away. She was well poised and nonchalant. I liked her. She could manage without him. I asked her what happened. Not because I cared, I was too busy and stressed out to care about a rookie losing a digit, but more to make conversation. And to avoid looking like an asshole, which I suppose I truly am. I don't know what happened, Deb said. 1 minute he was chopping, slowly I might add. She rolled her eyes as if to prove this, and the next thing I know I hear a crunch. Then he screamed. I nodded. I was thinking about having to go back to the office, which subs as the first aid room, to start searching through our endless database of resumes to find his replacement. I shuddered at the thought. Deb continued. That knife is sharp. Real sharp. And old. I've never seen a knife quite like it before. She rifled through another carrot to prove this. Chop, chop. The following day another recruit came in for training. His name was Cameron. Cameron looked to be the same age as Darren, only twice the size. He was huge. His extraordinarily beefy hands almost crushed mine when we shook. You're hired, I said upon meeting him. You can start now. He did, and the same thing happened. There was swearing, the loudest F-bomb I've ever heard, in fact. I hurried over to the prep station. Cameron and Deb were busy carving steaks and prepping beef portions. Deb was wearing a red bandana, concealing her short, golden hair. Cameron was wearing a Yankees ball cap and a simple t-shirt that matched his simple track pants. When I arrived, the Yankees ball cap was on the floor, next to a pool of blood. His fat finger was dangling from his hand, waiting for gravity to finish it off. Oh my God, I said. What I really meant was, not again. In his other hand was the old butcher's knife. The knife glistened under the crappy fluorescent lighting of the kitchen. I told him to drop the knife. He did. It struck the countertop and ricocheted to the floor. It bounced several times. I had to leap out of its way, before coming to a halt, slicing his Yankees cap in half. Cameron winced. Then he whimpered. Then his fat finger, which was hanging on like a booger, fell off. Blood exploded from his hand. He screamed. Then he slipped on a crushed-up French fry and tumbled to the kitchen floor, crushing his fat finger. Deb reacted first. She tried to help Cameron up, but he outweighed her by nearly 200 pounds. I helped. It took all the strength and patience I had. "Go clean yourself up," I told him. He just stood there, holding up his hand, sobbing. "Now." He left. I could tell from the mortified look on Deb's face that I may lose her too. Tomorrow is the grand reopening for dine-in service. I needed her. She reached down and carefully picked up the knife. She held it as though holding a rattlesnake. "Is there another knife I could use?" "Hell yeah," I said. "Maybe she'll stick around after all. Here's hoping." I found another knife. She took it and dutifully went back to work. Meanwhile, Cameron was being whisked away by the paramedics, fat finger and all. I mopped up the mess and disposed of the ruined produce. Me and Deb worked tirelessly until closing time, getting the kitchen up and running. Afterwards, I bought her a whiskey and a beer. Tomorrow was opening day and it was looking to be a total shit show. Opening day was a hit. Deb and I proved to be the dream team. We worked 12.5 hours in the hottest kitchen on this planet. The day went off without a hitch. The mysterious butcher's knife had been put away and forgotten, that is, until the next morning, when the knife reappeared. I arrived early and started prepping for the impending lunch rush. The butcher's knife was lying on the countertop, waiting to get chopping. I examined it closely. The knife felt unusual. Its weight distribution seemed off. The blade was unusually heavy and incredibly sharp. The words and symbols carved onto the handle made my stomach queasy. I started preparing the soup of the day, Philly steak soup. I started slicing up steak wedges and tossing them into the soup pot. The soup smelled delicious. As the soup was near completion, I cut into the final piece of fleshy meat and almost cut off my thumb. The old knife, it would seem, was a little too eager to get chopping. Its blade fell with furious report. I jumped. Then I laughed at my jumpiness. "I'd better be careful with this knife," I continued. The knife seemed to work on its own, so I let my mind wander. I've been doing this job for so long that I swear I could do this blindfolded. Then I nicked the tip of my pointer finger. I fetched myself a Band-Aid. Deb arrived at 4 p.m. She knew what to do, so I let her run the kitchen for the following hour while I ate my dinner and slurped down a frosty mug of ale. I was contemplating whether or not to indulge in another tasty beverage when I heard a terrible cry. It came from the kitchen. It was Deb. The kitchen floor hadn't been swept or mopped since the lunch rush, so it was a disaster. There was lettuce, burger buns, chicken wings, nacho chips, French fries, potato wedges, red and green peppers, calamari and pasta sauce spilled everywhere. There was blood, too, and lots of it. Deb was looking at me with wild wonder. Her eyes were deep as an ocean, full of fear and confusion. Beside her on a cutting board was her thumb. Globs of blood stained the blade of the knife. Deb started freaking out. "It's the knife. The damn knife." Her voice was unusually shrilly. "Get it the fuck away from me." I stood frozen for a moment, letting my mind process what it was witnessing. Also, I admit, I was thinking about how I'd get through the impending kitchen rush all by myself. My eyes went to the knife, which was waiting proudly on a pile of partially chopped vegetables. I noticed the markings on the handle had changed. I shook my head and blinked. Somehow, new words were carved into it, not that I could understand what they actually meant. There was an eyeball inside a pyramid surrounded by tiny script which wasn't there before. Carefully, after wiping Deb's blood from the blade, I held the knife up to the light to study the newly formed symbols. The knife leapt out of my hand. It went for Deb's hand. It found its mark. It cut off her index finger, leaving her with 2 missing digits, then it crashed onto the soiled kitchen floor. Deb fainted. Great, I thought, she's of no use to me now. The blood was egregious. I could see tendons poking out from where her finger and thumb should be. Deb stood up, turned and vomited next to the deep fryer. A few stray chunks of vomit spilled into the deep fryer, causing it to rumble and protest. The smell was atrocious. I gathered her thumb and finger and put them in ice. I'm getting good at this, I thought. Deb was rushed to the hospital. By now the police were interested in Chuck's little kitchen of horrors. I was interrogated for over an hour. Then they realized I was of little help as I offered no practical insight into this matter. I went back to work. The old butcher's knife was waiting for me on the countertop. Impossible, I told myself, I swear I had left it on the floor. But there it was. Tiny crimson droplets kissed the corners of the cold, silver blade. Desperately, I searched for another knife until I found one. I sharpened it good. The dinner rush was exhausting, but I managed to pull it off all by myself. I asked for a raise. It's now 9 p.m. and the kitchen is closed and I'm thinking about hiring more new staff. A fluke, I told myself, as I pondered the carnage that had gone down this week. People are on edge and mistakes will happen. This was going through my mind as I began prepping for tomorrow's lunch rush. I grabbed the knife. Chop, chop, I went. My mind shifted towards beer. Oh, how I deserve to get drunk after this awful shift is over. Chop, chop, I went, just before I lost my index finger. Somehow, I had grabbed the old butcher's knife by mistake, which of course was impossible because it had been put away for good. Chop, chop I went.